Broadcasting from the ARN Racing Studios in Southern California, a turn for media company, ARN Los Angeles. This is ARN, the American Racing Network, the Motorsports Authority. Now,
drivers, start your engine!
You're shifting gears on ARN with Alan Bailey.
Well, there goes the neighborhood.
You name it, we got it. NASCAR.
Kyle Busch, the 2015 NASCAR Sprint Cup champion.
Yeah, you guys are awesome!
IndyCar.
Scott Dixon not only wins in Sonoma, but wins the 2015 championship.
We win on the tiebreak.
Incredible performance.
Drag racing.
Pop the corks, and Tron Brown is the champion for the second time in his career.
Supercross.
Ryan Dungey becomes the 2015 Monster Energy AMA Supercross champion.
And so much more. So get ready. You're shifting gears on ARN with Alan Bailey.
Welcome on in, Gearheads. We're in Daytona this weekend, or at least NASCAR is. I'm in Southern California. But we are in Daytona. Speed Weeks 2016 well underway at the Great American Speedway in South Florida. Welcome on in to Shifting Gears. I'm Alan Bailey. Over the course of the next hour, we're going to break down not only everything that has happened down in Daytona, but everything that is going to happen over the course of the next 3 days. Trucks tonight, Xfinity tomorrow, and the Daytona 500, wrapping it all up on Sunday on Fox. Lots of stuff to cover over the course of the next hour. Want you involved at the Alan Bailey on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. You can also use the hashtag ARNRace in order to get in on the conversation, which I highly encourage you do. Let's start off the show like we always do with today's hot topics. We start with last night Can-Am dual races out in Daytona, which set the field for the 2016 Daytona 500. In dual race number one, it was Dale Earnhardt Jr. holding off Joey Logano in an impressive blocking match to win dual race number one. Earnhardt will start third in the Great American Race on Sunday, right behind his teammate Chase Elliott, the rookie in the number 24 Napa Chevrolet, taking over for Jeff Gordon, who's now in the Fox booth this weekend. And Jeff Gordon made his debut in the Fox booth last Saturday on Fox in, that Sprint Unlimited race. And no, I'm not talking about the newest cell phone plan from the cell phone provider. I'm talking about what was the Budweiser Shootout, which did consist of Pole Award winners, which is now more or less, hey, if you finish somewhere in the top 30 in points, we'll go ahead and let you in for one reason or another. But it was basically a wreckfest. We'll break it down. Speaking of wreckfests, dual race number two, multi-car crash on the final lap in turns 1 and 2. Will send a lot of drivers to backup cars, including the outside pole center, Matt Kenseth. Jimmy Johnson got loose, and in order to avoid him, Jamie McMurray slid down to the inside, collected Johnson, McMurray, Truex Jr., Allmendinger, Danica Patrick, Kurt Busch also receiving damage, but he will not be going to a backup car. Johnson more than likely a backup car. Truex Jr. more than likely a backup car. Same with Allmendinger. Danica Patrick going to more than likely use her regular car. Still haven't heard word from the team on that one yet, but we do know that Kenseth and Johnson will both start from the rear with backup cars. And, oh, by the way, it was Kyle Busch, the defending champ, who ended up winning dual race number 2. We'll break it all down later this hour. And Andretti Autosport merged to form a 4-car field. Andretti Autosport announced yesterday that they will join forces with the 2011 Indy 500 champ, Brian Harr Motorsports, in a merger that will see Andretti field a 4th entry in the 2016 Verizon IndyCar Series season. The number 98 Honda, filled by Brian Hart Autosport, will join the Andretti Autosport stable, along with the crew members from the team, owned by the former IndyCar competitor Brian Harr. More on this later in the hour. Supercross is out in Arlington this weekend, and unfortunately, Suzuki will not be traveling to round 7 of the Monster Energy Cup this weekend in Arlington, Texas. as we have been told that Blake Baggett and James Stewart will not be in Arlington for this weekend for Monster Energy Supercross. Baggett sustained an injury during the off-season testing, returned to the racing last weekend in San Diego, but failed to qualify for the main event. He's just raced one other event this season, finishing 15th in Oakland. No timetable for his return. As far as James Stewart, he returned to riding this week, but will miss his third straight race as he continues to deal with the post-concussion symptoms after his round one concussion out in Anaheim during round one earlier this year. No word on his recovery as of yet. Also, earlier today, Ty Dillon turning the fastest times in Xfinity Series practice. He led the field today for tomorrow's NASCAR Xfinity Series race at the Daytona International Speedway. And we'll get you an update on Truck Series qualifying as it becomes available to us. We're still waiting to see the final results on that. From the ARN Newsroom, I'm Alan Bailey. Now you're up to speed. Don't you feel speedful and lovely and ooh, so great, so great. Yes, so great. By the way, wasn't in the Hot Topics because it was so far away, but Winter Nationals were this last weekend. We were out there, had a damn good time out there. Amazing crowd out there, amazing racing on hand. I don't want to call it a Frankenstein project, but the project that the NHRA and that the Top Fuel guys came up with, the crew members came up with, phenomenal. Just absolutely phenomenal racing out there. The funny car finish with Ron Capps taking the win, absolutely perfect. Oh my gosh. It was a photo finish, and if you look at it on the photo itself, you honestly can't tell who won. Capsy apparently won it by a hair, and I'm not exaggerating with that. It literally was a hair. According to the microscopes and according to all the technology and officials, it was literally a hair. Just ever so slightly. I'm guessing maybe the guys on Funny Car are going to start putting maybe one extra decal on the nose from now on, because that pretty much was the difference in Funny Car. But Ron Capps winning for the first time in almost a year in Funny Car. Got a chance to sit down with him before the race and talk to him. That interview we had last week. You can also log on to AirandRace.com and check out that interview. That was my favorite interview of the weekend. And it was great because Ron and I were just joking around, killing time basically, because of everything that was going on in Media Day. Couldn't find a quiet spot, let me put it that way. And basically once we did, it was like, oh, finally, look at we get to actually sit down and talk on microphones. Wow, look at that. It was absolutely phenomenal, and he divulged some interesting information about personal habits of him and John Force that were interesting to say the very least. They made me very much raise my eyebrow going, wait, what did he just say? What the heck is Force into? No, for real, he is? Very, very, very interesting. And if you've seen Fox this week, you see tons of coverage and tons of coverage down at Daytona for the 58th annual Great American Race, the Daytona 500 on Fox this Sunday. But we're going to take a little bit of an honest route, let's just say, with all the coverage and everything that was going on down there. We'll take an honest look at everything, which will make you really go, what? And here's something that's interesting. Who's going to be driving Tony Stewart's car after this weekend? Brian Vickers drove it last weekend, unfortunately got into an accident. Will drive it in the Great American Race on Sunday. Who's racing it after that? I have a serious question and serious suggestion. What's wrong with Brian Vickers driving the 14 car after this weekend? Is there something wrong? I don't think so. I think it's okay. I don't know. It was a very interesting situation because the latest rumor is that Ty Dillon's going to be taking over the 14 car while doing his Xfinity races, because he is running the full Xfinity race for his grandfather, RCR, that number 3 Chevrolet in the Xfinity Series race. So we could see Ty Dillon doing the double duty, but I don't know. I don't like that idea, because just because Grandpappy has some cash doesn't mean that you inherited the racing skills, pal. I mean, seriously. Ty, I think, is a good driver. I don't think he's as good as his brother, and I still think he needs to prove himself before he jumps up into a Cup car. Yeah, he's racing in the Great American Race this weekend. Ty Dillon is. However, I don't care. Grandfather bought a ride for you. Congratulations. You had to get it in on speed. You did. Congratulations. You think maybe Grandpappy put a little extra something in that engine for you there, pal? Huh? Yeah, just a little bit. So the fact that Ty Dillon made the Daytona 500, yeah, it's impressive, but considering your grandfather's a millionaire, he owns this race team, probably sent his race teams to crap just so you could get a good car, and you're going to go ahead and ride around in 30th and end up in a wreck. Okay, awesome, great. However, I seriously think that a guy who is an Xfinity Series champ, who does have Cup Series win and Cup Series experience, deserves the ride of the 14 car until Tony Stewart gets back. Because unlike Ty Dillon, he's not going to be caught up with this Xfinity car. He's not going to be splitting his time. He's not going to be splitting his focus. He'll be 110% on the 14 car and doing what he needs to do, keeping it up in owner points and also giving the team good information to rely into the car and to put into the car to make the car better for when Tony Stewart comes back to racing, which we're being told is sometime in May around the All-Star race, but I think that's just a little bit extreme, maybe just a little bit aggressive, Tony. Seriously, take your time, bud. Relax. But comments of Ty Dillon up on AaronRace.com, how it would be an honor to drive Tony Stewart's car until my grandfather came up with the money to make my own car for me to go faster. Yay. I need to set the record straight right now. My problem with the Dillons, the Ty and his brother Austin Dillon, their grandfather gave them the best equipment, literally, out of the RCR shop. And yeah, Austin went on to win a couple of Xfinity Series championships. Perfect. He was winning races. Yeah, I think he earned the 3 car in the Cup Series. I think he earned that Cup ride. He hasn't really shown it yet, but RCR sucks, and they've been sucking on the racetrack for the better part of the last 20 years. So what else is new? Look at Ty Dillon. Won a couple of truck races. Doesn't have that Xfinity win yet. Doesn't have a Cup win. Has some Cup starts. Has a bunch of those, but can't pull off a win in Xfinity. Do me a favor, Ty. As soon as you can actually prove yourself in Xfinity, then go ahead and come call me. Come knock on Tony Stewart's door and go, Tony, can I drive your car now, please? Grandpappy said I did good. I got a gold star. I got a gold star on the trophy. It's gold and everything. Can I drive it? No, Ty. Go back, Ty. Don't need you here, Ty. Thank you. We have a former series champ, and we have a former chase driver in this series that has proven himself to be capable of handling a Cup car. You still can't figure out those Xfinity cars, so go figure out those Xfinity cars, then come talk to us. Yes, that's what you should do. Yes. Seriously, that's the world we're living in. Ugh. Not happy, to say the least. Can you blame me? Anyway, over the course of the next hour, we'll talk about that. Plus, Kurt Busch and AJ Allmendinger both have an interest of running the 100th Indianapolis 500 later this year. Should they do it? Can they do it? Will they do it? I don't know. It's very kind of split at the moment, to be perfectly honest with you. It's one of those things where we're honestly just going to have to, I hate saying wait and see, but we're going to have to wait and see, because we still very much don't know if it's a good idea, if it's possible, if he should do it, if he could do it. So we'll see what happens. The truck race getting ready to kick off out in Daytona with their season opener at the Daytona International Speedway. Lots of interesting names in different places for the 2016 season, but Matt Crafton seems like he's going to be the guy to beat tonight. At least that's what we're hearing. The Thor Sport entry from the Toyota camp over there with Matt Crafton, that at number 88. And yeah, he's going to be one to keep an eye on this weekend, so we'll keep an eye on him. We'll get your recap of everything that happened out in the duels, including who made the race, who didn't make the race, and everything that happened with that Kenseth Johnson crazy last lap crash that happened in duel race number 2. So do yourself a huge favor. Don't go anywhere. You know why? Because you're shifting gears right here on the American Racing Network. I'm Alan Bailey. Don't go anywhere.
Take ARN anywhere. Download your favorite ARN programs on iTunes. Keyword search ARN and listen online at arnrace.com.
It's the Nerdgasm Podcast.
I want to point this out, though. I think Kylo's getting you're getting a bad rep, Kylo, because he stopped a laser blast midair. He can suck thoughts out of your mind.
Yep.
He doesn't fear anybody.
Yep.
Takes a laser blast from Chewie's weapon.
Yep.
Not afraid to show his face. Approaches his enemies often. Fights while bleeding out in the freezing cold.
Oh, yeah.
And he's labeled a crybaby.
All right.
How is he labeled a crybaby?
The internet has labeled him a crybaby.
You know what?
My gosh.
I'm not the internet. I don't know.
Kylo took a lightsaber to the face.
He did.
And he just gave the death stare. He wasn't crying.
That was blood dripping down his
that
face.
was
not
those
tears.
weren't tears. That was blood, dude.
Exactly. And if you want to claim that it were tears, then it was clearly the snow all over his face.
Now we can set the record straight.
All right.
So Kylo, no cry baby.
Download new episodes of the Nerdgasm Podcast every Friday on nerdgasmpodcast.com, on iTunes, and now available on Stitcher.
I'm in almost every school bus and classroom. You see me around the neighborhood, and you tell me that I'm a pretty good kid. Well, I'm 1 out of every 5 children in America, and I'm struggling with hunger. Please visit feedingamerica.org today and find your local food bank for ways to help. Every dollar you donate helps provide 8 meals for kids like me. We are Feeding America, brought to you by Feeding America and the Ad Council.
You're shifting gears on ARN. Here's Alan Bailey.
Hello. He knew my name. That's very cool. Well, come on in. You're shifting gears right here on the American Racing Network. That's arnrace.com. I'm Alan Bailey, and there is some interesting stuff happening in Daytona, namely Speed Weeks 2016. And if you haven't checked out Daytona Rising, by God, you have to go check it out, because it's extremely impressive, to say the very least, because seriously, it's insanely, insanely cool. I seriously wish we had this at every single race track. Seriously. It'll happen. Give it time. It's coming. Just give it time. So this is interesting. We had a very interesting race last night. 2 interesting races, I should say. We saw the dual races, which set the field. And if you're unfamiliar with the dual races, Can-Am Duel, Can-Am sponsored the dual races this year. The Can-Am dual races basically set the field for the Daytona 500. What I mean by that is we have a normal qualifying session, which happened last Sunday, which saw Matt Kenseth and rookie sensation, I'm calling him that from now on, by the way, Chase Elliott, who picked up Chase on the pole, Matt second. So the starting lineup on the front row is set based off of the individual times themselves. Now, everyone else, literally, is set by the dual races. And basically, dual race number 1 is the inside line. Don't ask me why we do it that way. The inside line. Dual race number 2 is the outside line. So that's why you saw some of your favorite drivers in one race versus another race, certain teammates in one race and not the other one. More or less coincidence, more or less where they ended up on the speed chart that caused that. Now, what caused the drama? Well, drama. Oh, that's a fun little 4-letter word, if you know what I mean. Well, the only thing that I can do is hand it over to experts. Jonathan Merriman, for example, who was down in Daytona for the race last night, who has a much better recap than I ever could have off the top of my head. So, Jonathan, sir, take it away.
Thursday night, the field was set for the Great American Race, the Daytona 500, with the 2 Can-Am duels from Daytona International Speedway. Chase Elliott would lead the field to green, but Dale Earnhardt Jr., the master at restrictor plate racing, would take the lead on lap 3. He did that in the car he calls Amelia, which ran all restrictor plate races last year, winning 2 of them. On lap 30, Ryan Blaney had a vibration halfway through the race. He would have to come to pit road. As a result, he lost the draft, but would be okay because he was locked into the Daytona 500 on qualifying time. 14 laps later, Cole Witt, who wasn't locked in, spins in front of Regan Smith, and he tags Brian Scott. Cole Witt ended up taking it to the garage, and he will end up missing the Daytona 500. In the end, Dale Jr. holds off Joey Logano and Ryan Blaney to claim the win in the Can-Am Duel number 1 as Brian Scott crashes before they cross the line. Ryan Blaney and Michael McDowell, they would be the two from Duel number 1 to lock themselves in to the Daytona 500. Now on to Duel number 2. It would be an all JGR parade for the first half of this race as your pole sitter, Matt Kenseth, led his teammates around the 2.5-mile oval. On the last lap, Jamie McMurray comes up into the outside line and Jimmy Johnson taps his bumper. That triggered a wreck that involved a lot of good cars, including Carl Edwards, Martin Truex Jr., Danica Patrick, and Matt Kenseth, who has to give up a front row starting spot in the Daytona 500 because he'll go to a backup car. Not all bad news for JGR. The defending series champion Kyle Busch wins the race under caution. Failing to qualify for the Daytona 500 were Cole Witt, Josh Wise, David Gilliland, and Reed Sorensen. I'm Jonathan Merriman.
Thank you, Jonathan. I'm Alan Bailey from the Era News Studio. You are listening to Shifting Gears right here on ARN. Lots of stuff I want to talk about the Can-Am Duels last night. Namely, the wreck involving Johnson, Kenseth, and others. Jimmy Johnson in the 48 and Matt Kenseth in the 20, both going to backup cars. They will start from the back of the field in the Daytona 500. And in case you're wondering, Matt Kenseth will be in the second starting position where he qualified during the parade laps and during pre-race. But then, as they drop the one to go, he will drop back, as will Jimmy Johnson, and they will go to the back respectfully. Here's what was interesting about the crash itself. We look at the crash. It happens because essentially, you had the 18 car and you had the 1 car who were first and second. Johnson was third. He was on the high side up against the wall practically. You had the 18 and the 1 down near the bottom middle of the racetrack. Kyle darts upward on the racing surface, going into the turn, literally entering the turn, in order to break the draft and to block Jimmy Johnson. Now, the 1 car of Jamie McMurray jumps up there, which at the time it happens. He's racing. It's the last lap. This is for essentially 1 position better in the Daytona 500. I mean, I get it, but keep in mind, all 3 drivers involved in the wreck, the initial wreck and the initial contact, all locked in. Jamie McMurray locked in on speed. No, he wants to go out there and get a good starting position. I understand that. But it was an aggressive move. The 1 car, I don't think, should have made that move. He should have, it might have been a spotter driver issue. It could have been the position on it. I don't know. But basically, the 1 car darts up. The 48 is there. The 48 car basically jumps upward on the racetrack. Does he get into the wall? It doesn't look like it, but he does spin to the bottom, which mid-spin allows the 18 and the 1 car to get away. They finish 1-2 in the race officially, but during the spin, it collects the 41 car of Kurt Busch, sends him into sparks, does pretty significant damage, but they will repair that car for the Daytona 500 on Sunday. He'll be ready. No backup car for Kurt. However, it was the 78 of Martin Truex Jr. who was there, got significant damage off that, and after that, it was on. You had the 47 get into him. You had the 20 car, which just kind of barreled into there. He was on the high side and he had nowhere to go. He hits the 78 car on the high side, basically demolishes his front end. He will go to a backup car. The main 3 drivers that really got a significant amount of the damage, Jimmy Johnson and the 20 car of Kenseth, also the 78 of Martin Truex Jr., junk heaps. Danica Patrick got involved because she was spinning she basically spun herself out in order to avoid the contact, which put her down into the grass, which race car that's low to the ground and uneven grass. Doesn't really work that way. So Danica got some decent damage on her nose, mostly front fascia, but she's okay. Her car was okay. No backup car for Danica, but it did hand the win over to the 18 car, the defending champ, Kyle Busch rather. But Johnson's car, a heaping wreck. The 20 car could barely roll. He got barreled into from behind as well by some other driver. We didn't see who that was. And it ultimately means that the 20 and the 48 both going to backups. Looking at the block by McMurray from a different angle, you had, and keep this in mind, you had the 48, you had the 41, you had the 78, so on and so forth, all in a single file line right behind him. Kyle dove out to block the one car and then dove back up in order to block Johnson. The one car, I don't want to say didn't know he was there, but he jumped up to try to catch that draft. Johnson was there. Basically, they tapped bumpers, which caused Johnson's car to get aero loose, and Johnson's car comes spinning around. From the angle that the spotter saw it on, in case you're wondering, does it look like contact was necessarily inevitable? I say yes. From the TV angle, which, by the way, is a camera that's literally right next to the spotter stand, it does look like there's not enough room there. It's a very tough angle. I'm not putting the blame on the spotters. I'm putting it on, it's one of those racing deals. Because McMurray honestly did not look like he was clear of the 48 car at all by the time he started his dive upward on the racetrack. And Johnson tried to go nowhere he could go. He went up the racetrack as far as he could, almost got into the wall himself, but kept it off the wall as best he could, and ultimately collected the 41, the 78, the 47, the 20, which got the blunt of the damage, and it was on from there, really. Now, I know what you're going to say. Is this race 100% necessary when these guys are all locked in and qualifying doesn't really matter in the race itself? Because ultimately, how do I put this? It's Daytona. It's a restrictor plate race. You can go from dead first to dead last in half a lap, literally, due to no fault of your own. You can go from 20th to first in 2 laps because of some excellent driving on your part. Is it that important? It's the Daytona 500. Yes, it is. You want to win the Daytona 500. I want to win the Daytona 500. However, there was just no way that anybody's going to give up anything, because a better pit selection could ultimately be the difference between winning this race and not winning this race. That's how important it is. Now, the Daytona International Speedway has a phenomenal pit road, hardly any bad pit stalls in there, but you do want a better pit stop or a better pit stall selection. And that's ultimately what these guys are fighting for. Where they start for the first, essentially, 2 laps of the race is not crucial. It's not, unless there's a big wreck, you want to be towards the back and avoid it all. But it's not something that's 100% must-have. So for that, I do think McMurray's move was a tad bit aggressive, and some of you agree. Chris McCall on YouTube actually commenting, "This is why pole sitter should not race the duels. If I was on the pole, I would start it and park it. There's no point of risking it when you're locked in the front row." I agree. However, as Kyle Busch fan pointed out, I mean, Chase Elliott can go race because he needs the experience, but there's no reason for Matt to race. Listen, I'm being serious here when I say this. Yes, Chase Elliott does need the experience. He does have only a handful of Cup starts under his belt. Not a whole lot of restrictor plate racing under his belt in the Cup cars. He needs to know how these things handle. However, you think Matt maybe, kind of, sort of, wants to know a few things about who his car works well with in the draft, out of the draft, pushing, pulling, closing rates, how certain drivers are driving. You think he wants to know some of that stuff for Sunday? I think he does. I think there's absolutely a reason for these pole sitters to race in the dual races, but at the same time, I think we have to go ahead and put an asterisk next to them if they wreck their cars under certain circumstances of their not of their own cause. Then maybe, just maybe, we'll let them go to a backup car. I think they've earned that for having the fastest car in Daytona, one of the fastest cars in Daytona. And I think it should maybe be like that for all of Speed Weeks. Now, the reason it won't happen, I got to tell you, even though I'd like to see it happen, it won't happen because if that's the case, you're going to see the big powerhouse teams like Hendrick, like Gibbs, like Roush, like Penske, the guys who, frankly, have money to burn, going out there essentially with fast cars, but cars that they're willing to sacrifice during the dual races in an attempt to get a better starting spot. I just see dirty play. And I'm not saying any of the respected organizations will do that. I'm not saying that at all. But I'm saying that it's not fair for teams like the Hendrick, like the Gibbs, like the Penske's, who frankly have the money to go out and get another backup car or 2 or 3 in case of catastrophic wreckage on any given Daytona Speed Weeks, versus teams like the Wood Brothers, let's just say, maybe Richard Petty Motorsports, even Tommy Baldwin Racing, who are racing with paper-thin budgets, who don't have the resources that some of the bigger teams have, and some guys who were just trying to simply make the race. Just make the race. Don't care where I start in it. I just want to make the race. I want to start on Sunday. We saw a lot of guys go home. We saw 5 drivers go home from this event. Remember, we backed the starting field down, NASCAR did, from 43 starters to just 40 starters. 4D. That is 3 cars gone. However, in Daytona, you really feel the blunt of that because we had 5 drivers go home. Literally. Everything that they've worked for the last, some of them as much as 10 months, down the drain. Worthless. Everything you've done, everything, down the drain. Just picture that for 2 seconds. You've been working on a project for the last 10 months. You've been pulling in overtime hours. You work for a smaller company. You've been working your ass off in order to put a car together, in order to get this project done, to see it to its completion. And you know it's just a prototype. It might not go. And then you go out there, and guess what? You get involved in a wreck. Or a wreck happens, and unfortunately, like the smart guy you are, your car comes to a complete stop, doesn't get any damage. However, because of that, does not make the Great American Race. That's the world we're living in. That's the reality of these guys. My heart goes out to those 5 guys, seriously, and to their teams and to their crews, because it seriously is, it's heartbreaking. It's seriously heartbreaking for these guys. And it literally means the end of their year in some cases, because that's how unfortunately this world works and how this industry works. It could be absolutely phenomenal, spectacular, and breathtaking 1 second, and the next, you're done. That's it. And that's a real shame. That's a real shame. This one coming from Killin' Kinda K1. McMurray is driving a bit over his head in the first 2 races. He's blocking like he's driving bumper cars. If your car isn't fast enough to stay ahead of another driver, get the hell out of the way, hillbilly. I like that one. That's a funny one, Killin' Kinda K1. By the way, get a new nickname that doesn't have KKK in it, pal. But that's, yeah, I don't think McMurray was driving in over his head. Frankly, he's had some very disappointing seasons for the last 5 seasons. And he's really just trying to get that whole organization, Chip Ganassi, they're just trying to get things working again. They're trying to see what they can do. And frankly, having a good Daytona Speed Weeks and locking yourself into the chase week 1, that's a huge load off your mind. You get to go out there and try things, experiment with things in the car after that. You don't think so? Go look at what certain drivers did last year and then go see what happens after that. On that note, what about Jimmy Johnson? I have to think that Jimmy Johnson, during the Sprint Unlimited, I don't want to say was driving over his head, but he kind of had a, screw it kind of mentality. We saw some very aggressive bump drafting. We saw some very aggressive dives, blocks, passes on Johnson's behalf. And I'll be honest, when I first saw this live, I thought, great, Johnson's overdriving the car again, and he just took out a bunch of cars. That's just great, champ. Way to go. Then I went back and saw the replay and went, okay, maybe that wasn't it, but still. Johnson did that during the Sprint Unlimited. He wrecked his car during the Sprint Unlimited, took out a couple of cars, Sprint Unlimited, because he was too aggressive. And that's what you have to know. You have to know when to ultimately do good things. You have to ultimately know when to make that aggressive pass, when not to make that aggressive pass, and when ultimately to back off, give that guy a little bit of room because maybe it'll come in handy later. Darrell Waltrip, even though he's not my favorite person, I will say this. He's the guy who came up with the term co-opetition, and I agree 100%. Cooperating with the competition. You're not helping them because they're helping you just as much as you're helping them. They're cooperating together. Co-opetition. Cooperate with the competition. You can go ahead and go somewhere maybe into victory lane, maybe. I don't know. Maybe, just maybe, a little bit. Maybe, I don't know. That's something to keep an eye on. Now, we're going to go ahead and step aside here again when we get back on the other side of it. A lot of interesting coverage down in Daytona. We do have the Camping World Truck Series about to kick off their 2016 season tonight on FS1 at the Daytona International Speedway. That's going to be coming up here in about right at the end of this program, actually. See how that works? We're essentially the pre-race to the truck race. Yeah. Pretty cool, right? So they're coming up here soon. We'll check in on the track, see what's going on, give you a starting lineup for tonight's race, and go over a few more things that I saw. A couple of cars to keep an eye on, too, with the Daytona 500, I think, this weekend. Plus, oh yeah, Supercross, that thing that everybody tends to forget about right around the time that drag racing and NASCAR starts. It's actually happening this weekend. I know. They raced San Diego last weekend. Excuse me. They raced San Diego last weekend during the Sprint Unlimited, same time that the NHRA was in Pomona for the Winter Nationals. Believe it or not, Supercross is still happening. Supercross San Diego last weekend. This weekend, Arlington, Texas. Next weekend, guess what? Atlanta. It's awesome. It's still happening. And by the way, it's getting pretty damn competitive. So we'll kind of look at what's coming up this weekend out in Arlington. Talk about a little bit what we saw out in San Diego last weekend, wrapping up the Southern California tour for Supercross as it heads kind of basically on the other side of the country where all the rain and snow and stuff is going on. It's going that way now because all that stuff hopefully is going away soon, right? Right? The snow's leaving, right? Winter's leaving, right? Spring's around the corner, right? Right? Please? Pretty please? I think so. I'm not too sure, actually. Hopefully it is. Hopefully for your sakes it is, for all you fine folks that are back there snowed in still and dealing with all the not so lovely snow at this time of the year. But fear not, because down in South Florida, thunder is about to erupt. Ooh, because Sunday is the Daytona 500. I cannot get over that. I'm seriously thrilled. So don't go anywhere. You're shifting gears right here.
Sick of bad race coverage or none at all from those other networks? Make ARN your one and only for all things motorsports. ARN, the Motorsports Authority.
You must have thrown 1,000 pitches teaching him to hit a home run. Spent countless Saturdays running routes so he could learn to hit an open receiver. Endless afternoons teaching him how to hit the three-pointer. But how much time have you spent teaching him what not to hit? Teaching boys that all violence against women is wrong is one of the most important things a man can do. Learn how to start the conversation at teachearly.org. Brought to you by Futures Without Violence and the Ad Council.
It's the Nerdgasm Podcast.
I want to point this out, though. I think Kylo's getting you're getting a bad rep, Kylo, because he stopped a laser blast midair. He can suck thoughts out of your mind.
Yep.
He doesn't fear anybody.
Yep.
Takes a laser blast from Chewie's weapon.
Yep.
Not afraid to show his face. Approaches his enemies often. Fights while bleeding out in the freezing cold.
Oh, yeah.
And he's labeled a crybaby.
All right.
How is he labeled a crybaby?
The internet has labeled him a crybaby.
You know what?
Oh my gosh.
I'm not the internet.
Kylo,
I don't know.
Kylo took a lightsaber to the face.
He did.
And he just gave the death stare. He wasn't crying.
That was blood dripping down
Yeah,
his
that
face.
was
not
those
tears.
weren't tears. That was blood, dude.
Exactly. And if you want to claim that it were tears, then it was clearly the snow all over his face.
Now we can set the record straight.
All right.
So Kylo, no cry baby.
Download new episodes of the Nerdgasm Podcast every Friday on nerdgasmpodcast.com, on iTunes, and now available on Stitcher. Download and listen to your favorite ARN programs on the go. Download Shifting Gears on arnrace.com, iTunes, and now available on the Stitcher app. ARN, the Motorsports Authority.
You're shifting gears on ARN. Here's Alan Bailey.
Welcome back to Shifting Gears right here on ARN. I'm Alan Bailey at at the Alan Bailey on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. You can also now follow the show, actually. We have a Facebook page. We have a Facebook page. Neener, neener, neener. We have a Facebook page, like I just said. We are, what is our thing? It's facebook.com /Shifting Gears ARN. Actually is our Facebook page. You can check us out there, drop us a line there. Also get links to past shows and other cool stuff during the week as well. You can also log on to arnrace.com for all this cool information, or follow ARN on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at ARNRace. Isn't that cool? See how it's all similar? How it's easier for people like me who don't remember stuff so good can remember? Yeah, makes my life easy. I want to talk about a couple of things. One, I think it's important to remind people of this. Even though we saw a race last weekend, I don't consider that the start of the season because it's not a points-paying race. You have not the whole field's in it, and you have guys doing bonehead moves like Jimmy Johnson, taking, I don't want to say risks, but taking moves and doing moves that aren't 100% necessary, let's just say, for really no purpose at all, turns out. So for that reason, I kind of want to talk about everything that's coming up this year for NASCAR. One, we have a heck of a lot of rookies in the field, believe it or not. A lot of rookies. And I love it. We haven't seen a rookie class this good probably since 93, when you had the likes of Gordon, Labonte, and Kenny Wallace jump into cars all in the same year. Because these crop of drivers, I think, are going to do great things in the Cup Series. Namely, Chase Elliott. He's one that obviously is standing out. He's taking over for Jeff Gordon. All eyes are kind of transfixed on him right now, and I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, frankly, for the kid. I tend to believe it's not a good thing, just because having that much extra pressure from the outside can't really be a good thing. But at the same time, hey, pressure's on, rise to the occasion. Am I right? Kind of, sort of, a little bit, maybe. But we'll see what happens ultimately. Your Rookie of the Year candidates are Ryan Blaney, Chris Buescher, Jeffrey Earnhardt in a part-time ride. You have Chase Elliott and Brian Scott, all rookie candidates in 2016. Lot of different faces in a lot of different places. Going through numerically who's where. McMurray returning to the 1 car with Chip Ganassi Racing. Keselowski still at Penske Racing in that number 2 Miller Lite Ford. You have Austin Dillon in that 3 Dow car. Same with Kevin Harvick in the 4 car, who now is losing the sponsorship Budweiser. Busch Beer taking over as the primary sponsor for a handful of races. Jimmy John's also on that car as well. Casey Kane back in the 5. Trevor Bayne back in the 6 car this year. Regan Smith jumping up from Xfinity Racing into Tommy Baldwin's number 7 Chevrolet. Danica Patrick still in the 10 car, but Nature's Bakery on that car. So now blue and white number 10 car for Danica Patrick. Denny Hamlin still in the 11 car, looking to be a serious contender this year. Casey Mears returning to the 13 car this year. You have traditionally Tony Stewart in the 14 car. Brian Vickers is in it this weekend. Clint Bowyer is an interesting case. Yes, 5-hour Energy's on his car. Yes, he's in the 15. However, he's with H. Scott Motorsports in 2016 for 1 year before driving that 14 car in 2017 next season. So kind of a different car, different place for him. We have Greg Biffle in the number 16 KFC Ford for Roush. You have Ricky Stenhouse Jr. back in the 17 car. Kyle Busch in his championship-winning 18 car, of course. Carl Edwards and Matt Kenseth in the 19 and 20 cars, respectfully. Rookie sensation, soon-to-be rookie sensation, Ryan Blaney in the number 21 car for the Wood Brothers. And guess what? Full time for those guys. Very, very cool. Keep that in mind. Joey Logano back in the 22. You have David Reagan jumping over to BK Racing's number 23 Dr. Pepper Toyota Camry for the full season. You have Chase Elliott in the number 24 car taking over for the retired Jeff Gordon. Napa on the car, on the number 24 car for most of the races in 2016. Paul Menard still in the 27, same with Ryan Newman in the number 31. Bobby Labonte in the number 32. You have Chris Buescher, who's taking over the 34 car full time from Front Row rather. Landon Castle in that number 38 for the same team. You have Kurt Busch back in the number 41 with Haas back, as well as Monster Energy taking over for about half those races. Kyle Larson in the Target number 42 as well this year. Eric Almirola back in the number 43 for Richard Petty Motorsports. Now Brian Scott jumping over to Richard Petty Motorsports, but instead of driving the 9, which Sam Hornish vacated, that number 9 is now the number 44 with Shore Lodge on that car, as well as Albertsons this weekend out in Daytona. You have Michael Annett back in the number 46 for Tommy Baldwin. You have A.J. Allmendinger back in the number 47. You have Johnson, obviously, in the number 48 car. Martin Truex Jr. back in the number 78 car, but this time he actually has Bass Pro Shops as well as Furniture Row on the hood of that number 78 now Toyota Camry. We see Michael Waltrip in a BK Racing entry this weekend in the number 83. We see Dale Earnhardt Jr. in the number 88, of course. Matt DiBenedetto in the number 93. You have Ty Dillon in the number 95, more or less running a handful of races in that number 95. Partial effort out of the RCR camp. So who are we keeping an eye on this year? Who are the guys that I think are going to do good? Well, number one, I do think the number 21 car will actually surprise some people. I sincerely think that. I think that if you look at what he's done, Ryan Blaney will do great things in that number 21 car. He's done great things in Xfinity and in truck races. You can't tell the difference when a Cup regular is in that car. It was in the car last year versus Ryan Blaney because they were having the same results. As long as he has the equipment underneath him, he's going to go to the front. Chase Elliott, is he going to live up to the hype? Is he going to live up to that number 24 number? Keep in mind, it's paint. It's a metal car with paint on it. It's not Jeff Gordon's car anymore, folks. That's Chase Elliott's car. He's earned that car. He has an Xfinity championship and a runner-up and a handful of wins in Xfinity. I think he's earned that right, to say the very least. He also has a couple truck wins. He's the guy who's going to do good things this year. Is he going to make the chase? I don't know. I really don't. I think he could potentially make it on points. I think he will make it on points. Will he get a win, though, this season? I don't know. It is so incredibly darn hard to win a race in Cup this year. In general, I don't know if he will. I think he's absolutely capable of it, and if Daytona is any indication of his speed and how well he does in a pack, I think he's capable. He's more than capable. Keep an eye on him. Chris Buescher in the number 34 car, that team has struggled. I think they will continue to struggle, not due to Chris Buescher being behind the wheel, but because they have just not figured out this new car. They're working on some stuff over there. I think this year will be more of a science project, but I do think that Chris is going to help that program more and more. Brian Scott in the number 44, I don't know. He's had some good runs in Xfinity, but he hasn't had winning runs in Xfinity. Not really. He does have some wins, but he's not a championship contender, and he's not really the guy who's going to be up near the front every single week, week in and week out, especially in Xfinity. That doesn't translate to Cup. He didn't have the best equipment under him in Xfinity, yeah, I'll give you that, and he doesn't really have it with Richard Petty Motorsports. They're trying to figure things out over there. I don't think it's going to be a great season for him. I think they're going to struggle a little bit. Hopefully I'm wrong, but we'll keep an eye on those guys. Something I do want to talk about because I think it's worth mentioning. Not only did Joe Gibbs Racing win the championship last season and most of the big races, Joe Gibbs Racing had 14 Cup victories last year, points-paying Cup victories, mind you, in 2015 between their 4 drivers. And so far this year, they have 2 of the 3 non-point-paying races wins. That's pretty darn impressive, actually. It's very impressive. Something we honestly need to stand up and take mention of. Looking over at Joe Gibbs Racing, they expanded to 4 teams last year. Typically, when you do that, one of the teams, all of the teams, most of the teams are going to struggle. Not the case out of Joe Gibbs Racing. 14 wins. Everybody won at least 2 races. At least. That is extremely impressive. When you're looking at your new team as having the worst season out of everyone there, and by the way, he finished top 5 in points with 2 wins, that's saying something. He had the quote-unquote disappointing season from the rest of his teammates. That's extremely impressive with Carl Edwards in that number 19 car. Something to keep an eye on and something to remember. Now, where are all the cars starting in the Great American Race? You have Matt Kenseth, who is technically qualified in the second position. He'll drop to the back. You have Kyle Busch starting 4th. You have Carl Edwards 10th, and you have Denny Hamlin 11th, starting 11th in his 11th attempt at the Great American Race. Now, here's something that's very interesting. This is Denny Hamlin's 11th attempt at the Daytona 500. You know what's the most winningest car number in NASCAR history? The number 11 car. Coincidence? I don't think so. I think it'll be interesting to see if Denny Hamlin can pull it off. I talked to him a few weeks ago. You can go on to ARNrace.com and you can listen in. He was on the program a few weeks ago. Talked about that very subject, winning the Great American Race, which is on his mind, always on his mind, on every stock car driver's mind, on every driver's mind. Be very interesting to see if he can actually pull that feat off. I think he can. It's just a matter of, I don't want to say getting it done, but he's just got to get it done. He's just got to go out there and be up near the front and put himself in position to win that race. And I think truly that he can. It's just a matter of doing it. So we'll see what happens. Now, we'll go ahead and we'll step aside for the final time. When we get back, we'll go ahead and talk about Supercross like I promised. NASCAR Camping World Truck Series getting ready to roll off for their season opener down in Florida. We'll give you a little bit of a preview of what's coming up with that. Plus, will they race or will they not? Will they race or will they not? Yeah, believe it or not, 2 Cup drivers might be racing the Indy 500. We'll talk about it. Do me a favor. Don't go anywhere. You're shifting gears right here on ARN.
Sick of bad race coverage or none at all from those other networks? Make ARN your one and only for all things motorsports. ARN, the Motorsports Authority.
You must have thrown 1,000 pitches teaching him to hit a home run. Spent countless Saturdays running routes so he could learn to hit an open receiver. Endless afternoons teaching him how to hit the three-pointer. But how much time have you spent teaching him what not to hit? Teaching boys that all violence against women is wrong is one of the most important things a man can do. Learn how to start the conversation at teachearly.org. Brought to you by Futures Without Violence and the Ad Council.
It's the Nerdgasm Podcast.
I want to point this out, though. I think Kylo's getting you're getting a bad rep, Kylo, because he stopped a laser blast midair. He can suck thoughts out of your mind.
Yep.
He doesn't fear anybody.
Yep.
Takes a laser blast from Chewie's weapon.
Yep.
Not afraid to show his face. Approaches his enemies often. Fights while bleeding out in the freezing cold.
Oh, yeah.
And he's labeled a crybaby.
All right.
How is he labeled a crybaby?
The internet has labeled him a crybaby.
Oh,
You know what?
my gosh.
I'm not the internet. I don't know.
Kylo took a lightsaber to the face.
He did.
And he just gave the death stare. He wasn't crying.
That was blood dripping down
Yeah,
his
that
face.
was
not
those
tears.
were tears. That was blood, dude.
Exactly. And if you want to claim that it were tears, then it was clearly the snow all over his face.
Now we can set the record straight.
All right.
So Kylo, no cry baby.
Download new episodes of the Nerdgasm Podcast every Friday on nerdgasmpodcast.com, on iTunes, and now available on Stitcher.
You're struggling with your mortgage. You think about it all the time.
What are we going to do if we lose the house?
It's time to stop thinking and start dialing. Call 1-888-995-HOPE for a free government program that offers expert one-on-one advice about your mortgage options. We've helped over 1 million homeowners, and we want to help you. Call 1-888-995-HOPE or visit makinghomeaffordable.gov. Brought to you by the U.S. Treasury, HUD, and the Ad Council.
You're shifting gears on ARN. Here's Alan Bailey.
The NASCAR Camping World Truck Series getting ready to roll for the Next Era Energies Resources 250 from the Daytona International Speedway. Their season opener, you can listen to it on MRN or you can watch it on Fox Sports 1 starting here in just moments. Grant Efflinger in the number 33 truck on the pole for that one. Johnny Sauter outside pole, but I'm keeping an eye on Matt Crafton and Daniel Suarez, who are 5th and 6th respectively on the starting grid. they're going to be pretty darn good, I think, tonight. Keep an eye on them because they could ultimately say a thing or two about who wins this race tonight on Fox Sports 1. Got to keep an eye on Rico Abreu, who's in the number 98 truck. Number 16, he's going to be rolling off from the 16 starting position tonight. Rookie sensation. He is an amazing driving talent. Been watching him race in dirt for a few years now. He knows what he's doing behind the wheel of a race car. He's going to take some time, I think, to get acquainted with the trucks, just like any other rookie does. But I think truly he's going to be making some waves in the truck series. Once he figures these trucks out, get out of his way, he's going to be going somewhere. He's going to be going somewhere fast. Also want to give a shout out to Kyle Busch Motorsports because KBM is fielding 4 trucks tonight in Daytona. That is extraordinarily impressive. They were talking about it, and basically the 4th truck was pulled together last moment with, I don't want to say the B team, but the guys who ultimately were the guys who were getting stuff ready at the track and not going to the track initially. They pulled together a 4th team, got a driver, and they're out there this weekend. They qualified for the race. They're starting in the top half of the field. That's impressive. That is extremely impressive. Ryan Truex in the number 81 Toyota as well tonight, starting 20th. Ben Rhodes in the number 41 is going to be starting 24th in the field. Looking at it, you have Johnny Sauter in the number 21 Silverado starting 2nd. Timothy Peters is going to be rolling off 3rd. Austin Thar going to be rolling off 4th. Daniel Suarez, like I said, 5th. Matt Crafton 6th. 7th, John West Townley. Christopher Bell in that KBM truck, 8th. 9th, another KBM truck, Cody Coughlin. Cole Custard out of the Junior Motorsports stable, the number 00 truck, going to be rolling off 10th. That's your top 10 starting lineup out in Daytona for the NASCAR Camping World Truck Series getting underway here momentarily. Now, want to talk really quick, and I know, Speed Week show. Give me a break. It's the Daytona 500. I can go ahead and do a NASCAR show every once in a while if it's a big race, and this is a big race, so zip it. I don't want to hear it. But out in San Diego this last weekend, not a huge surprise. Tell me if you've heard this one before. Stop me if you've heard this one before. Ryan Dungey dominated. Have you heard it before? I think you have. I've heard it a few thousand jillion times as well. Dungey kicked off the 20-lap 450 main event this last weekend by edging out his teammate Marvin Musquin for the whole shot award and pretty much led the whole damn thing. I mean, I don't know. The top 3 went unchanged for the first half of the race until a battle for 3rd erupted between Kennard and Ken Roczen. It wasn't really, oh my God, kind of spectacular racing, but it was good. I mean, you had Dungey, Cole Seeley, and Ken Roczen, your top 3 finishers, with Anderson, Kennard, Tomac, Musquin, Reed, Peck, and Justin Brayton in the top 10. Your points, pretty much Dungey, I don't want to say he's running away with it, but he has one heck of a lead over Ken Roczen in 2nd, Jason Anderson 3rd, Cole Seeley 4th, and Chad Reed is 5th right now in the point standings for 450. Looking at the 250 West class, right now, Joey Savacci won in 250 over this last weekend. Cooper Webb, 2nd. Christian Craig, 3rd. Looking at the top 3 in points, Joey is still leading right now the points over Cooper Webb. It's only a 3-point gap right now, though. Christian Craig is 3rd, roughly 15 points back, give or take. So it's not a hellacious difference, but it is kind of a tight battle as the season is winding down for those guys. This weekend, they're going to be out in Arlington, Texas, and believe it or not, unfortunately, we have a lot of good riders out. You have Blake Baggett and James Stewart both out for Arlington, which means that Suzuki team will not be traveling to Texas this weekend. They're still suffering from their injuries. We do wish them a very speedy recovery. Also out this weekend, going to be Jordan Smith out in Arlington this weekend in 250. He's been going, 5.36, but he hurt his shoulder in practice before round 4 in Oakland, and more or less he's been sidelined ever since. So that's something that he's still battling. We do wish him a speedy recovery, and hopefully he'll get back out on the track very, very soon. Want to remind you can log on to arnrace.com to download this and other episodes of Shifting Gears. I want to wish everyone a very safe, happy, joyful Speed Weeks 2016. Hopefully your favorite driver has a good running. Hopefully we don't knock the fence down this time we're in Daytona, people. I'm just saying, I'd like to keep the fence up. I think it looks great where it is. Just saying. No fences knocked down. To the Supercross guys down in Arlington, Texas, thinking about you. Wish I was down there. Have some fun. Kick some ass. Take no prisoners, guys. For everybody here at the American Racing Network, I'm Alan Bailey. Log on to arnrace.com throughout the week for your latest updates. We'll see you on Wednesday, regular time, regular place, right here on the American Racing Network. Like I said, for everybody at Shifting Gears and the American Racing Network out of Southern California, I'm Alan Bailey. See ya at the track.
You've been listening to the American Racing Network, a turn for media company. This is ARN, the Motorsports Authority.